If your orchestral music sounds fake, it's probably not your samples. It's usually just 3 simple things: panning, reverb, and balance. Hi, I'm Tony, and I help artists make orchestral elements actually work in their music no matter the genre or style. And this isn't just for film or game soundtrack composers. This is for literally anyone who wants to put orchestral flair into their songs. Maybe that's pop music or worship music, literally anywhere orchestral elements pop up. First, panning. And this is where orchestral music tends to start feeling instantly fake. Usually what I'll hear is things are overly wide or not wide enough. And don't let pre-panned libraries that you buy, that they say they're pre-panned, don't let them deceive you. Even those still need panning. The way I like to look at it is a big old half circle, right? You've probably even seen diagrams like this on Google for like orchestra seating charts, right? You got your violins over here, you got your basses over here, and your brass kind of, wide through the back, all that kind of stuff. Take away the instruments for a second. We've got left and right, okay? And we also have back and front, right? If we, the people, are listening in to the orchestra, here we are. There's the orchestra, right? Front to back, left to right. No matter where you're standing, you could be here, it doesn't really matter. This is what we're looking for. Generally, if you got headphones, we're kind of trying to pretend we're like dead center here, right? We want to hear that kind of big, spacious, perfect seat in the house kind of reverb. Most common thing that I hear is that people coming from a pop music or rock music background, the orchestra is way too wide, right? I'll hear violins basically 100% left. And that can start to feel detached from their violin twos, which maybe aren't 100% left. Maybe they're like 75% left, right? So what this causes is this void, right? There's this empty space. And yes, reverb plugins will help fill in that space, and some tape saturation, all that stuff will kind of just, add a little bit of glisten and a little bit of glimmer in there to kind of fill out that space. But at the same time, if the panning is too wide, the orchestra begins to feel detached. On the opposite end of the spectrum, what can happen is the orchestra feels way too narrow, right? Where their brass are sitting here, their winds are sitting here, the strings are sitting here, all because the library they got said it's pre-panned. Yes, there are some libraries like, for example, East West's harp that feel pretty much pre-panned. It's like that harp is 75% left when you just play it. Great. But I would argue most pre-panned libraries are not panned wide enough for the type of music people are making with it. So if you're doing symphonic metal and you need a little bit of width, but not crazy width, that can be your double tracked guitars or whatever. You got to think about just widening it out. Here's a section where I pretty much have everybody playing, but I'm gonna show you demonstrate the panning with the brass and the strings because they're generally the wider spread. Winds are a bit more centered. So here's the section. Okay, there we go. Now I'm gonna turn the panning off on the strings. I'm gonna turn the panning off on the brass. So what I'm noticing is it just feels tubby, right? For lack of better words, it just feels very bloated right in the center. And those string lines that are kind of ascending and descending, they get lost behind the horns a bit. So panning, gentle panning, can really, really help. Second thing would be reverb. I find most orchestral mixes are either way too washed out or they are literally bone dry. The hardest part about this is that a lot of libraries come with rooms baked in. So people think, well, I don't need reverb, the room is baked in. Or they think it's completely bone dry, so all they do is they throw a giant reverb tail on there and call it a day. But you kind of have to find somewhere in the middle. So even with roomy samples, say Berlin or Spitfire, having a touch of algorithmic reverb to create just a nice little tail can go a very long way. But be careful that the tail isn't way too long. I think folks new to this will see, they'll get East-West Spaces too, and they say, ooh, Orchestral, it's got like 3.8 seconds of reverb tail, but the BPM of their track is like quarter equals 160, and it's a boss battle or something. that's generally going to just create a thick wall of just mush. So find a middle ground. I generally find a singular hall reverb that's algorithmic, that's a bit more transparent. Say Cinematic Rooms is a great one. Valhalla Room is another great one. Somewhere between 1.8 and 2.3 seconds. It's just a nice orchestra hall. It gives it enough of that lush space, but it's not so long that it gets washy, and it's not so short that it feels like a real small chamber studio. But one thing that's really important is the idea of front to back depth, right? A lot of times people think the more reverb tail you add, the further that space goes back, right? So let's say on a solo English horn that is recorded really, really dry, if you just throw a lot of reverb tail on there, that'll give it that sense of depth. Well, there's a couple things you can do to make that better. So here's a section that has a kind of a feature. This is the Berlin Woodwind Soloist. It's a very, very dry library. I'm gonna play it as I have it here. Right? There it is. There is the Woodwind Soloist. So if I just give it nothing but hall and crank up the hall, this is what it's going to sound like. Not bad. That is literally the amount of reverb that I have assigned to it. It's not bad, but it still feels like, okay, it's a dry library. I will just even solo it here so you can hear how dry this library is with no reverb at all. It is literally the Sahara Desert, okay? That's what's going on. So with the amount of reverb that I have set, what can you do? How can you get that nice tail without it feeling like it's still sitting in front? Well, let's talk about early reflections, all right? So what I have on here as an insert, right here, as an insert, is SP 2016, but really any reverb would do. A very, very short decay, very, very short decay, kind of emulating a space, right? So I'm just gonna solo that English horn, and I'll just keep bypassing this back and forth. One more time with it bypassed. So what it's doing is it feels like it's close, but there's still this weird echoey reverb thing happening. And that's what will make it feel detached. That's what will make it feel fake. I'll do the same exact passage with a little bit of a lead in with this off, these early reflections off. Same thing with it on. Now it feels like the English horn is where it should be sitting, which is basically if these are our strings here, English horn should be somewhere right in there, right? These are our strings kind of behind the violas and the cellos. There it is, okay? So adding a little bit of that early reflection immediately takes you can really play with front back positioning, right? Pro tip. Point 3 is balance. This is a very big topic because it includes volume automation, it includes equalization, it includes MIDI information and CC data and mod wheel and a whole list of things. But the idea of balance, right? Let's break it down in terms of who wants to be heard most, who wants to be heard second, and who's supporting all of that, and what else is happening in between, right? What's the little ear candy? What's the big powerful bass? What is most natural, right? At the end of the day, that is what we're trying to do. So if nothing else, I could talk in length about volume automation, I could talk in length about everything else, but I want to give you the biggest one, which is starting with your MIDI data, starting with your CC data. So let's take a peek at just a very short passage using brass, okay? Just a very, very short passage with brass. All right, what you're seeing here, And this is the most commonly overlooked thing that I think I ever see happen with virtual orchestration, which is not using CC11, which is different than your mod wheel. So this is basically on my tuba. I have these kind of low bass notes, bum, 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 bum. I have my mod wheel, which determines the actual sample playback, like the sample itself, right? So here's my tuba doing the thing. Okay. The mod wheel is determining what dynamic this marcato patch, this marcato articulation is going to be doing. Okay, that's step one. Step two is using CC11, which almost acts as an internal volume knob. I like to call it microdynamics, right? Within the macrodynamics determined by your mod wheel come the microdynamics, which is determined by very small volume fluctuations, right? When you think about an actual tuba player or an actual string player, whatever it is they're doing, actually playing a sustained line or something that attacks like this, ba, 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 they're not leveling off, right? They're not just kind of hitting that dynamic and staying there. They're giving it fluctuation. So for something like this, where I want this articulation, this playback, this marcato, ba, 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 and that's happening with the mod wheel, that's determined by the mod wheel, the CC11 is giving it even more of that fade, right? So even looking at this, it's subtle. So I'm hitting, you want to line it up with this velocity marker, I'm hitting it and I'm tailing it down. I'm hitting it and I'm tailing it down. Hitting it, tailing it down. Without that there, that marcato fade off, maybe however orchestral tools normalized these samples, it just feels static. It feels a little stuck. So before you even think about riding your fader on your mix console, before you think about throwing on an EQ, before you think about anything else related to balance, start with your CC1 mod wheel, give it more life, give it more ebb and flow, and play with CC11. You can assign it to a knob on your keyboard, play with that to give your ebbs and flows more life, right? This is really, really handy. This is just one example of many, right? Really long sustained lines, for example, really big legato lines. I know some people who will ride CC1 and CC11 at the same time. I don't quite do that for a variety of reasons, which I'll get to in another video. But if you use them both, it will immediately take your virtual orchestra stuff and give it way more life. Use this to allow the instruments to earn their space. Who's going to be the melody? Who's going to be the accompaniment? Who is going to be the foundation, the bass line? By riding both of these wheels, you have way more control over what's actually happening with the sample playback and consequently what you'll be able to do with it once it hits your mix console. So if you are struggling to make your orchestral music feel real, check out your panning, check out your reverb setup, and check out how much you're actually playing with balance within the instrument before it hits the mix console. If you want to go deeper into this, I've created a free starter kit for music makers. It is in the description below. It breaks down all the orchestral instrumentation that's out there and gives you tips, tricks, and thoughts to actually put them effectively into your music so that you're not scrambling for, what do I do with this? I want to throw in an orchestra, but I don't know what to do with it. Check out that guide. I think it'll really help. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.
See the clouds, they ride over the windy tide. Laughter echoes through the summer